Meesho reportedly paid close to $300 million in tax. Not for anything they sold, not for anything they earned. They paid it just to bring their parent company home to India. In 2025, Razorpay did the same, reportedly around $150 million. Groww, reportedly around $160 million. PhonePe did it first a few years ago, moving its parent from Singapore back to India. Flipkart, Zepto, Dream11. Every few months, another Indian startup announces it is bringing its holding company back home. I am CR Adityavikram Banka, director at AS Banka Advisors Private Limited. 5 years ago, every founder who walked into my office asked the same question: should I flip out to Delaware? Today, a growing number ask the opposite question. They flipped out years ago and now they want to come back. That move is called the reverse flip, and it has quietly become one of the biggest structuring decisions in Indian startup land. So let me explain what it actually is. When a startup flips out, it puts a foreign company, usually in Delaware or Singapore, on top of the structure. That foreign company becomes the parent. Your Indian company becomes its subsidiary. The whole cap table sits offshore. A reverse flip undoes that. You bring the parent back to India. The foreign holding company merges into or is replaced by the Indian company, and India sits back on top where it started. Founders, employees, and investors end up holding shares in an Indian company again. Why is this suddenly happening at scale in 2026? Reason 1 is the exit. The Indian public market has become deep, liquid, and hungry. For many of these companies, listing in India now produces a better outcome than listing in New York. But there is a hard rule. To do a domestic IPO, the company that lists has to be Indian. If your parent is a Delaware company, you cannot list it on an Indian exchange. So before the IPO, the parent has to come home. Reason 2 is reality. Most of these companies already live in India. The team is in India, the product is in India, the customers are in India. Delaware or Singapore parent became a shell, adding cost, tax complexity, and compliance without reflecting where the business actually is. Reason 3 is that India made it dramatically easier in 2024 with one specific rule change. That change is the reason this trend went from a trickle to a flood, and I will explain it, along with the tax bill, in the next chunk. Let me start with the rule change, because it is the whole story. For September 2024, bringing a foreign parent back into an Indian company meant a full tribunal process. The merger had to go through the National Company Law Tribunal, the NCLT, public notice, objections, hearings, regulator inputs, a court order, on average 8 to 12 months. For a unicorn racing toward an IPO window, a year of regulatory limbo could kill the deal. In September 2024, the Ministry of Corporate Affairs changed that, created a fast-track route for inbound cross-border mergers, specifically where a foreign holding company merges into its wholly owned Indian subsidiary. Key change. This route does not need NCLT approval at all. It runs as an administrative central government fast-track process instead of a judicial one. Still need RBI sign-off, but the tribunal step is gone. Timeline compresses from roughly a year down to a few months. That single change is why you are seeing a sudden rush of reverse flips. It made them financially viable for the first time. Now the part nobody warns founders about, the tax. Reverse flip is a capital event. When the foreign parent's shares are swapped for or replaced by shares in the Indian company, that swap is a transfer. The shares get revalued at their current worth, and the gain on that revaluation can be taxed. The important nuance is who pays. The big tax bills you read about, Meesho's reported $300 million, are largely borne at the foreign shareholder and foreign parent level, because the value built up offshore is being migrated back onshore. Indian resident founders are often not the ones who carry the heaviest charge, but every situation is different, and the only safe answer is to model it before you start, not after. It is the real lesson of those headline numbers. Meesho, Groww, and the rest did not pay hundreds of millions because they made a mistake. They paid it because value had compounded offshore for years, and bringing it home crystallized a tax that had been deferred. Earlier and smaller you are when you reverse flip, the smaller that bill. Waiting until you are a unicorn is what makes it cost hundreds of millions. On the FEMA side, there is good news. Cross-border mergers are governed by the RBI's Cross-Border Merger Regulations of 2018. If your merger complies with those regulations, it is deemed approved by the RBI. You do not have to go and beg for a separate prior approval. Compliance with the rulebook is the approval. That deemed approval design is a big part of why the fast track route actually works in practice. Two more costs founders routinely miss: stamp duty on the merger scheme, which varies by state, and translating your foreign stock options back into an Indian ESOP. But real time and money for both. In the final chunk, who should actually reverse flip, who should not, and the 5-step checklist. So who should reverse flip and who should leave the structure exactly where it is? Reverse flip makes sense when you are genuinely heading for an Indian IPO inside roughly the next 18 months. Makes sense when your business, your team, your customers, and your revenue are already overwhelmingly in India and the foreign parent has become a costly shell. Makes sense when your investors now want a clean Indian listing entity and are willing to absorb the one-time tax cost to get there. It is usually a mistake when none of that is true yet. If you are years away from any exit, you still depend on US venture capital that wants a Delaware parent, or if you genuinely run meaningful operations offshore, unwinding the structure now just burns cash and triggers tax for no near-term benefit. Reverse flipping is expensive and largely irreversible. You do not do it on a maybe, and here is the trap I want you to avoid. Flipping out to Delaware on a hunch at Series A, reverse flipping at pre-IPO. That is paying the price twice. Big chunk of those headline tax bills is, in part, the cost of a flip that should never have happened in the first place. Cheapest reverse flip is the one you never needed because you did not flip out without a real reason. There is the 5-step checklist I run with every founder weighing a reverse flip. 1. Confirm the trigger is real. Signed intent to do a domestic IPO within roughly 18 months, or a concrete investor mandate, not a someday ambition. 2. Model the tax before you move. Get the share revaluation and the capital gains exposure quantified at both the founder level and the foreign shareholder level before you commit. 3. Check that you actually qualify for the fast track route. It is built for a foreign holding company merging into its wholly owned Indian subsidiary. If your structure does not fit that shape, your timeline and cost look very different. 4. Map the FEMA position early. Make sure the merger is structured to comply with the cross-border merger rules. So you get the deemed approval rather than a separate approval grind. 5. Plan the people side. Stamp duty and translating foreign stock options back into an Indian ESOP are where these deals slow down. I'm an owner for each before you file. If you are sitting on a Delaware or Singapore parent and starting to think about an Indian listing, that 5-step review is the highest leverage hour you will spend this quarter. Schedule a strategy session. The link is in the description. The entity comparison tool on Banka.com lets you compare the India, Singapore, and Delaware structures side by side for free, and the FEMA compliance checklist pairs directly with this video. This helped. Subscribe for a weekly founder-focused breakdown. See you in the next one.